I want to talk about something that I think is important to address here in this moment, given some of the things that I've said lately in my videos. And that is, I want to address this idea of defeatism and pessimism versus being justifiably alarmed about what's going on. Because I am alarmed, almost shockingly alarmed about what's going on in this country right now. And I think that has come across in some of my commentary of the last few days, as I intended, because I am alarmed. But some people have taken from that a defeatism in me. And I want to correct the record if that's what people think, because that is not where I'm at. I've talked about the worst case scenario, okay? I've talked about how we need to expect the worst. I've talked about how what is happening now could, in my mind, rightly be described or looked at as the beginning of a civil war. In fact, you may argue that it began quite a while ago. But whether or not you call it a civil war or not, it really is beside the point. The point is, for me, what has happened in the last week, I mean, everything has been bad up to this point and getting worse. But Donald Trump actually sending the military into Chicago against the wishes of the governor and of the mayor, who have said that there is no reason for you to send the military and we do not want you to send the military. That, coupled with Texas siding with the federal government, the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, actually siding with the federal government against another state and sending National Guard troops from Texas into Illinois against the wishes of a fellow governor. This is we've really crossed some sort of line here. And so I am increasingly alarmed. And yes, I know that Trump sent the military, he sent some Marines into LA a few months ago. That is a different situation legally, but illegal. But the reason he said he was sending them there is different from the reason he says he's sending them into Chicago. I don't want to belabor that point because it could confuse the issue, but that is illegal too. But this is, in my mind, several degrees worse than that. And the fact that a judge, a Trump-appointed judge, said that he had no legal authority to send National Guard into Portland, Oregon. See, he federalized the National Guard in Oregon and sent them into Portland. That was challenged in court. A Trump-appointed judge wrote a scathing opinion saying he had no authority to do that, and he is lying about the facts on the ground to justify his deployment of the National Guard. So she struck him down. So what did he do? He called up the National Guard in California to send him into Portland, because the judge's order was specifically about calling up the National Guard in Oregon. So we said, okay, you won't let me call up the Oregon National Guard. I'll just go to California and get some National Guard troops and send them into Portland. So she had to have an emergency meeting there, an emergency hearing there, and shut him down on that too. And my alarm is growing, not just because of those things, which is bad enough, but because, to me, it's clear what he's intending to do. He wants to get National Guard on the ground. See, ICE isn't enough. He has enough people in ICE to protect these ICE facilities, which is in part what he says he needs to do it for, which is, again, bullshit. He's got more than enough ICE agents to be able to protect the ICE facility. You know, he wants National Guard. He wants to get away with putting National Guard on the street, because ICE isn't going to be enough for what he wants to do next year. He wants to be able to call up the National Guard and the regular military. because he wants to use the military to steal the midterm elections and beyond. I think it's clear that's what this is about. And the brutality of ICE, they're being told to brutalize American citizens and whoever else. This is part of the strategy. He wants to make people in Portland and Chicago, and when he moves on to New York City and whatever other cities he goes to, he wants the people there to be scared to death when they see uniformed soldiers on the streets and when they see these ICE agents. Because Trump intends to deploy them all across the country in these major blue cities for the election. He is going to have these armed troops outside every polling place in these blue cities to suppress turnout. And he wants to condition the people in those cities to be scared to death. So when they see ICE and the military surrounding these polling stations, they're going to be afraid to go in and they're not going to vote. That is how Donald Trump is planning to steal the election. And I believe if people do show up in such overwhelming numbers that Republicans still lose the midterm elections, he will have military on the ground in those states to seize voting machines. We know for a fact that he wanted to do that when he lost the 2020 election. He's going to do that. If it turns out, if as the election results are being reported, and it looks like Republicans are going to lose control of Congress, he will send the military into those polling locations to seize the voting machines, and then he will declare that the vote was rigged, and then he's going to, whatever he's going to do that thereafter. Just say that the votes are null and void. I'm not turning over the voting machines because they've been rigged. Or maybe he's going to rig the voting machines and then turn them over to the states after the votes have been manipulated. I don't know. But I do know that his intent is to put the military into these cities to steal the election. Now, that is what has had me so alarmed, because it's clear that's what the plan is. However, do not take from my alarm, which I think is fully justified and everyone should be alarmed, as me accepting that it's a foregone conclusion that he will be successful in rigging the election and then beyond, in staying in office indefinitely, because he'll use that same template of using the military to try to cancel a future election in 2028. Maybe he will start a war. Who knows what he'll do? But I think it's clear. He's planning not to leave. How exactly he's going to do that, I'm not exactly sure. Maybe he'll have a bunch of plans ready to go and he'll try all of them. Who knows? But he's not leaving, not voluntarily. But don't take from that my anticipation that he's going to do all these horrible things or attempt to do all these horrible things and my alarm because of it. Don't take from that this idea that I've given up, that I'm defeated, that I think all is lost. I don't. When this is all said and done, I think this is going to end horribly for Donald Trump. You know, there is a history in the world of fascist dictators who try to seize power, and sometimes do for a period of time, but ultimately it ends very, very badly for them. I think it's going to end very, very badly for Donald Trump. I think he is going to try these things if he is not impeached and removed from office first, which is why I've been trying to promote that, because that is the best way to avoid all of that he has planning, that's coming. The best way is to impeach and remove his ass from office. Now, obviously, we can't do that right now, but that is why we need a mass uprising. We need to make members of Congress more afraid of us than they are of him. If we do that, we can impeach and remove him. But even assuming that doesn't happen, which, let's be honest, it probably won't, he's going to try these things. And even if he does, and even if he is successful for a period of time, in the long run, he's not going to be successful. It's going to end badly for him. At some point, if he does these things, and if he has some success in doing some of those things, then essentially the United States military, the National Guard, ICE, all these agents of the federal government, they will essentially be an occupying force in the United States of America, illegally exercising power in our system. It will be an illegal regime, and it will be an occupying force. And that cannot be sustained. You know, people talk about martial law, and he might try that. And just so you know, martial law isn't a thing in our system. There is no legal... Somebody's flipping out with a dog somewhere. Can't see where that is. Martial law is not a legal thing in our country where he can declare martial law, and there's no law that gives him that authority. There's no part of the Constitution. You know, the Insurrection Act is about as close as you get, and that's horrible, truly bad. But anyway, people talk about martial law. Well, even if he tries to implement martial law, okay, he can't lock down this country. He can't preside over this country as a military dictator with martial law. It's just not possible. This is an enormous country in terms of landmass and in terms of the population. We have like over 330 million people in this country. Okay? You cannot be an occupying force in a country this big that is this well armed. And I know you got a lot of these MAGA nuts who will be all in for the Trump dictatorship. But even them, a lot of them won't go along with this, and that's going to get real old real quick even for them, because they're going to realize that when you live under a military dictatorship, you know, MAGA isn't going to be spared the oppression that the rest of us are going to be experiencing too, okay? And so you're going to have an enormous group of people who are very well armed in this country. There's more firearms in this country than there are people. You cannot impose martial law and maintain control over a country like this. You just can't. And even if he gets to that, and I don't think it's going to get to that. I really don't. That's why we need to wake people up as much as possible. We have far too many people in this country who have no idea what's going on. You know, they live in information bubbles. They haven't even seen videos coming out of places like Chicago and Portland of ICE thugs, masked ICE thugs, beating people up in the streets. They have no idea. When you come across those videos, put them in front of as many people as possible. Wake these people up. Make them look at what is happening in this country, because I promise you, tens and tens of millions of people have no idea what's going on. You think people on Fox News have any friggin' clue? They don't. They're not showing that stuff on Fox News. You know what they're showing on Fox News? They're showing video clips of the riots in the summer of 2020, and they're telling their audience that that's happening now. This is how fucking out of it those people are, all right? We need to wake people up. We need to get them alarmed. We need to get them activated. I don't think it's going to get to martial law, but even if it did, worst case scenario like that, even if he manages to postpone elections, cancel elections, declare himself emperor for life, whatever he's going to do, and I don't put any of that past him. I'm alarmed that he's going to try those things, because he is. But even if he does those things, and even if he has some short-term success in doing it, he's not going to be able to maintain control over that. And it's going to end very bad. Let's just say that. It will end very, very badly for him. And you know what? I certainly hope none of that comes to pass. I certainly hope this country wakes the hell up, puts pressure on Congress. They impeach and remove him. I don't expect that, but that's what I hope. But maybe this country needs to go through something like this to realize what we're losing. You know, you don't appreciate what you have until you lose it. Maybe after nearly 250 years, it's going to be 250 years next year since the signing of the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Maybe this country has gotten too used to having it too easy for too long, and they've taken this all for granted. Maybe this will wake them up. Maybe this is what we need to go through every couple hundred years to wake people the hell up, and to be vigilant once more in safeguarding our liberty. I don't know. But I am optimistic that in the end, this authoritarian plan he has for himself as dictator for life, it ain't gonna work. It may get real bad around here, but it's gonna end real bad for him in the end. Of that I am confident. So please do not take anything I have said recently or will say in the future to think that I am giving up, that I am being defeatist, that I think all is lost. No, it's not. And Donald Trump, I'll say this, Donald Trump is not nearly as powerful as he appears. You know, he's got his masked thugs in the street. He's been getting away with a lot. That's the appearance of strength. He does that in part because he's so damn weak. What do you think all these executive orders are about? That's not the act of a strong man. That's the act of a very weak man who couldn't get people in Congress to go along with most of what he wants. You know, he could have had Congress impose these massive tariffs, but he did it by executive order because Congress would never go along with it. And he doesn't have the power of persuasion. He's a fucking idiot. He is weak. He is very, very weak. And there are signs that Republicans in Congress even are starting to wake up to this. And you know, things are going to happen that no one can predict. And I hope none of these horrible things come to pass, but you put these masked thugs who are clearly, a lot of them are just Proud Boys and militia. I mean, these are just nasty thugs. These are not professional law enforcement. Something bad is going to happen. You know, and history has shown that unforeseen incidents of one kind or another have set off bigger movements. I certainly hope that bad things don't happen, but bad things are probably going to happen. Things are going to happen that are going to wake the people up, and we need to help that process along. Anyway, I think you get the point. I am not defeated. I don't suggest any of you feel that way. We can win in the end. We're going to win in the end. He is not as strong as he appears. So let's take our country back. Let's fight back. Let's not give up. And don't take anything I said as giving up. I'm not. I'm in for this fight, and I hope you are too. Anyway, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.